as a church body, I don't know about you, but I think to this point in time, God's given us this YMCA to meet in for now. You know, the church owns 11 acres over on Nazareth Church and Reedville Road. And as best I could tell, you know, we've done a pretty good job making this an excellent worship environment now. Would you agree? Like this is, I mean, for a YMCA gym, this is it. And this is good. And we have the processes. Thank you so much to our greeting team who goes out there and makes people feel welcome. The parking lot team. Thankfully, you didn't have to go out and greet at the Dolphins-Chiefs game last night in negative 10 degrees. But it's cold for here, right? And you're out there welcoming people. Thank you so much for what you're doing. And these are the mechanics of ministry. But the heartbeat is to see Impact become an endearing church once more to the people who come. An irresistible place where they experience both the power of God in their life and the transformation that comes through God alone, but they also experience people who really, really care about them. And so last week, principle number 1 was show up, but principle number 2 this week, I want you to grab a hold of. It sounds like this. Quality number 2, I care about you. Let's say that out loud. Ready, set, go. Quality number 2, I care about you. Now, say it one more time and pick a person and point to them and tell them. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. Quality number 2, I care. All right. How many of you felt lied to? You know, right? No, I'm just kidding. Don't admit that, right? Well, go ahead, admit it. You go ahead and do it. So, listen. Matthew chapter 11, verse 28. Hopefully, at the end of the day, you came in here for one of two reasons. Either you are a Christ follower and you want to be more like Jesus, or you're exploring faith and you're not real sure, or you're coming back to church and you're trying to find out what it is like to follow Jesus. And in Matthew chapter 11 and verse 28, there on the screen, you can read it just to yourself. Jesus made this statement that is unbelievable, and it sets the tone for every person who says they're going to follow Christ. And we're going to apply this specifically to the church today, and we're going to look at the Old Testament, learn some principles. Jesus said, come to me. How many of you? How many? Say that word. What is that? You know, I study that word in the Greek. And you know what it means? It means all. It means everybody. Jesus made this big statement. Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Jesus made this claim that he is able to take on the burdens and the hurt and the pain, and he is able to care about you personally, and anyone who would come to him. He is willing to stop and care about them. Isn't that a good God today? I mean, you can say yes. You can help me preach, right? I told you before, I'm not good enough to preach up here by myself. I need you. And so Jesus is willing to do this. He is willing to care for everyone. We call ourselves Christians or Christ followers or people who are trying to do things according to God's word. And so we're going to set the stage that first and foremost, the reason why, no matter what we're going through, remember, Jesus was on his way to the cross. He was rejected by friends. He didn't have a home. By most standards, he would be freaking out and stressing out today, right, with his life. And yet he made this statement, come to me, all of you who are weak and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. If we're going to be a Christ follower, we are going to have to re-grab a hold of the concept of care. Now, I want to tell you the enemy of care in the church world today. The enemy of care is content. Hands down. There's no second place when it comes to the enemy of care. In many cases, church has become a place where we go to get content, right? This is why we're content to leave and not show up for months at a time, and we can find our favorite preacher. Listen, I know there are better preachers than me online, and I'm fine with that. I told you last week, it's not about that for me. There are churches you can chime into. There are Bible studies you can get online. There are podcasts. I mean, we live in the day of content. And I think one of the things that will make a church very sticky and will make you a super sticky person in your life is when we decide, you know what, I'm going to care about you like Jesus cares about you. And even more personally, like Jesus cares about me. That's the bottom line. And so we're going to walk through 3 C's of what it means to care. We're actually going to use the word care to define the word, which I know is, well, you know what? There are no rules. When you play drums and preach, all the rules are gone anyway, right? Because you feel good. You're like, hey, why not? And so here's our little cycle. Care, concern, and then community. As we care, then we start to become concerned. We care first. A lot of times we like to put concern first. We only care about what we're concerned about. That's not really what Jesus did. Jesus said, if you are concerned, I already care. I'm going to start by caring if you're concerned. And so then once we do those 2 things, it moves on into community. Now, I want you to know, because the series is both about a person and our church, you being a person and our church, this applies in so many ways. There are family members, there are friends, there are coworkers, there are situations that God is calling you to step in to care about once again. I mean, isn't one of the best statements in this life, one of the best statements in the world, I don't care? I mean, if you need to feel better for 5 seconds, just go, I don't care. You know, the Dolphins got killed last night. I don't care. You know, I don't care. It just makes me feel good, right? Hey, it's really cold outside. I don't care. Hey, my boss doesn't like, I don't care. It really feels good for a few seconds to not care, doesn't it? Am I lying to you? No, I'm not lying to you. But we have to start to care because we're following Jesus. That's the first principle. So let's pick it up, and we're going to look at David and Jonathan. Last week we looked at David and Goliath and how David showed up to the battle, and really all he had to do was show up, and God had the victory for him if he would just step into place. But it's not. Showing up is not the end-all, be-all. That's where it starts. If we show up, now we can build on it. And David didn't get to become a man after God's own heart by himself, right? I mean, have you heard the illustration before? If you've seen a turtle up on the fence post, you know he didn't get there by himself. He had help, right? Now, I know that illustration would be turned around, too. I just said that to my ministry mentor one day, and he goes, Dave, I don't know if I'd use that illustration so much anymore because, well, have you ever seen a turtle up on a fence post before? And I went, well, I haven't. He goes, oh, it's awful. It has its little legs, and it's up there, and it can't do anything. And I said, well, you know, I don't know. I'm still going to use the illustration. You could figure out how you want to use it. How does that sound? But David did not become a man of God's own heart. He did not get to the place of ruling the kingdom by himself. In fact, this is the instrumental time where someone stepped up to care, and it unlocked so much more, not only in David's life, but in the kingdom of God, which my hope and my prayer for you is that you don't just become a good Christian or I want your life to get healthier, and it should. You should start to align to God and get healthier. But ultimately, like the big goal way out there that you're striving for as a Christ follower, and if you're not a believer, this should give you like a little different angle. We should become people who are striving to take ground for God's kingdom. Are you with me on that? Are you with me? I mean, that should be the end goal, right, that we're striving. And so this is how Jonathan helps David. This is that story. Let's look at the first 4 verses. It says this. David now fled from Naioth and Ramah and found Jonathan. What have I done, he exclaimed. What is my crime? How have I offended your father that he is so determined to kill me? David kills Goliath, and at the end of that whole episode, the crowd start chanting cheers for David that are greater than Saul. Saul gets jealous and insecure that David's going to take his job and his kingdom. And so now Saul, we pick up the story where Saul wants to kill David. How many of you have ever encountered an insecure person before who wants to take you down? This is where David is at. What is my crime? How have I offended your father that he's so determined to kill me? That's not true, Jonathan protested. Jonathan is King Saul's son. You're not going to die. He always tells me everything he's going to do, even the little things. I know my father wouldn't hide something like this from me. It just isn't so. Then David took an oath before Jonathan and said, your father knows perfectly well about our friendship. So he has said to himself, I won't tell Jonathan. Why should I hurt him? But I swear to you that I am only a step away from death. I swear it by the Lord and by your own soul. Here's verse 4. I want you to really dial in here. This is pretty heavy. Jonathan's caught in the middle between his dad and his budding best friend, who is doing the right thing, P.S., right? And there are so many times we get in difficult situations. It might be in dating, it might be in marriage, it might be in work, where the pressure starts to build and it's a tough situation, and you hear the challenges of another person. And Jonathan gives us a great statement that just can flip all that pressure on its head and start moving problems forward. And I love this in verse 4. He says it, and it's actually going to be a point. Tell me what I can do to help you, Jonathan exclaimed. Brings us to our first point. We're going to work through those 3 C's: care, concern, community. So here's care. At the end of the day, if we're going to be a person, if you're going to be a person that people love to be around, and we're going to be a church that people love to be around, we have to be a church full of people who really care. Isn't that going to stand out in 2024? A church that really cares for people. And it all can be flipped on its head, where we don't have to be a church that's about content or just getting together or trying to have a few big moments or trying to be popular. We can be a church who really cares by walking around and literally saying this when we hear someone struggling, when we see someone having to encounter something new, when we see people who haven't come to church before, when we see people who are alcoholics and drug addicts, who are struggling with abusing substance, when we see people who have been abused or who are hurting or struggling with their job or home, there's so many issues. I mean, we have anxiety, we have all these things, and I think that we've come to a place in society where we can't do what Jonathan did because we become a society of experts. So what is our answer when people are in trouble or they're in trial or they have tension or they're in transition in their life? We go, who can I send you to that's an expert about this? Anybody with me on that? That's like the go-to in society now. And what we need to become as Christ followers is a people who answer like Jonathan. When we hear these things, we stop just for a second. It doesn't mean you could solve everything, but you still say, tell me what I can do to help you. I want us to practice. Online, you may have to say this out loud wherever you're sitting, all right? And let's say it together. Ready, set, go. Tell me what I can do to help you. Now, I feel like I have to really spell this out. Tell me what I can do to help you. This works in your marriage instead of being defensive and having a fight. It works in friendships. It works with that neighbor who has a party till 1 a.m. on Saturday and your dog barks and then you can't sleep, right? Whatever it is. It works with a person who can't fire up their boat motor for a bass contest. I mean, it works. Tell me what I can do to help you. Do you see? Because when we show that we care, it changes everything. Jonathan had some objections. He even had some objections. He thought his dad would never hide anything from him. He was just sure that there wasn't even a problem. And even still, after listening to David, he says, tell me what I can do to help you. Now, I want to dial this back into church. Listen, we don't just serve in the parking lot. We are there to help people. Do you know the number one question people have that if they haven't been to your church, and even if they go to church, and certainly if they haven't been to church in a long time or never been to church, when they hit the parking lot of any church, especially one at a YMCA, they're going to think this question, some version of it in their mind. What is going to happen to me in there? All right? I mean, they're wondering, do these people handle snakes? Are the rooms clean for my kids? Are they going to stand me up and embarrass me? Is this like an AA meeting where I have to say, hi, my name is Dave, and I've been a sinner for 12 years, and I'm coming. They don't, you come here, and you're kind of like, yeah, that's what it is. But they don't know. And so, like, Jason, when your team is out there in the parking lot, it's, yes, we're waving, yes, we're helping, yes, we're doing all those things, but I love, even when it's raining, they're bringing umbrellas. Why do we do that? It's not just so that we can be the up on at church. No, it's because each individual person who walks through the door, we have to care about, and we start in the parking lot, right? Do you get where I'm going? We're not just greeting at a doorway if you're a greeter. It's not just like, I have a spiritual opportunity. Someone who needs to be closer to Jesus, they may even need to know Jesus, is walking down the hall, and the best I can do is care about them, that they are walking around a long corner at the Y. I mean, how many of you consider coming to church your cardio after you do the hallway at the Y, right? I do. I take the day off and I have a Dorito. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. But at the end of the day, we have to be a people who really care, and we step into people's worlds. I love how Toby Mac said it. Real friends are willing to intrude. Now, I know you can't smother, but at the same time, there's something special about a church full of people who say, even though you're not my best friend, even though you don't look like me, smell like me, I don't even know much about you, I'm going to care about you because I know that Jesus cares about you. And so whether I'm introverted, extroverted, whatever it is, if I'm tired, Pastor Gage shows up having a baby for a couple of weeks now on no sleep leading worship. Didn't he do a great job leading worship today? If I had that kind of sleep at 46 years old, I think I might fall asleep during my own sermon. You know what I'm saying? But I digress. So, care. So Jonathan has this very profound statement. Tell me what I can do to help you that we can grab a hold of to become a people in a church who care. And then let's go 5 through 10. David replied, "Tomorrow we celebrate the New Moon Festival. I've always eaten with the king on this occasion. But tomorrow I'll hide in the field and stay there until the evening of the third day. If your father asks where I am, tell him I asked permission to go home to Bethlehem for an annual family sacrifice. If he says, fine, you will know all is well. But if he is angry and loses his temper, you will know he is determined to kill me." He's trying to help Jonathan out here because Jonathan said, "How can I help you?" And he goes, "Well, this is how," right? And so verse 8, this is really big. This is where we come into the area of concern. "Show me this loyalty as my sworn friend, for we made a solemn pact before the Lord. Or kill me yourself if I have sinned against your father, but please don't betray me to him." You see how much this matters to David at this point? It may not have mattered to Jonathan that much. He might have thought, oh, it's just pop, it's not a big deal. And here David he's wrestling with his very life. Verse 9, "Never, never," Jonathan exclaimed. "You know that if I had the slightest notion my father was planning to kill you, I would tell you at once." Then David asked, "How will I know whether or not your father is angry?" And it leads us from care to concern. Now, this is what concern says. Go ahead and throw that bad boy up on the screen. It says, "There's more riding on my care for others than what I think." Every single day, not just church day, but every single day, when you look into the eyes of people, they're wrestling with junk far more than what we could ever know. And I love what Jonathan is doing here to show care. Remember how I told you how we're kingdom advancers, we're gospel advancers? Jonathan in this moment didn't even realize how much his care really mattered. You see, in Isaiah chapter 11 and verse 10, you could write that down. It's not on the screen or anything. Jesus is prophesied as the root of Jesse. You Bible scholars in the room, who is Jesse? He was the father of who? King. I'm giving you, we're reading about him. Come on, y'all. Who is it? David. Jesse is David's dad. In Isaiah 11:10, Jesus is prophesied as the root of Jesse. In Revelation 22, I believe it's verse 6, don't quote, I think I'm right there. Revelation 22, verse 6, it says, Jesus himself at the end of the age said, "I am the root and the spring of David." Jesus identified himself as that prophecy. So, question, At this point, it's just a matter of friendship to Jonathan and David, but God is at work behind the scenes in a much bigger picture. And I want you to know this, God is at work in a much bigger picture in your life and in your relationships than you could ever imagine. Jonathan, by his care and then becoming concerned, like, wait a second, David, you're serious about this. You're hurting. You're going to die. Like, you think you're going to die if I don't help you. Jonathan is actually protecting, you ready for this? Your salvation. Yours. Thousands of years later, your salvation. Because if David dies, the lineage for the Christ, the anointed one, goes down, and there is no Messiah, and God's plan is thwarted, and God is not God. He'd have to step off the throne. All if David would have died. Think about this. Wow. You're like, whoa, I didn't see that coming in this story. My salvation, you mean like Jonathan, when he cared for David, he actually cared for you. And he cared for me. Because something inside of him must have said, wait a second, this is important enough that even though it may cost me my relationship, even with his own dad, there's something God is doing here that I have to be a part of that's going to compel me not just to show up, but to show up and to care. Are you with me? That's it. So let's move on. So concern. There's more writing on care than what you think. When you care for someone, you never know who you're really blessing and what problems are being solved by your care. You will never, ever, ever know when you start making your goal, taking ground for God's kingdom, and that compels you into care and concern. So here's the third part. Let's pick it up at verse 11. We'll read through verse 16. Here we go. Come out to the field with me, Jonathan replied. He starts taking some action, right? Starts putting some skin on his care, some feet to move into his direction. Come out to the field with me, Jonathan replied. And they went out together. Then Jonathan told David, I promise by the Lord, the God of Israel, that by this time tomorrow or the next day at the latest, I will talk to my father and let you know at once how he feels about you. If he speaks favorably about you, I will let you know. But if he is angry and wants you killed, may the Lord strike me and even kill me. Now he's truly in on the concern. David's concern is now his concern. Isn't that kind of opposite of how the world works? We're like, dude, that's your problem. That's up there with I don't care, right? I mean, if you just say that, whenever it'll cure you for about another 30 seconds. If you go, dude, that's your problem. That's not my problem, right? It feels good to say these things, but that is not what biblical care is, and that's not modeling Jesus, right? And so he says, even kill me if I don't warn you so you can escape and live. May the Lord be with you as he used to be with my father. Ooh, ouch. The person who wasn't caring. And by the way, we talk about an enemy of care being content, but an enemy also of care is selfishness and striking other people down and not caring about what they have to deal with when we walk into the room. And it's interesting that even Saul's son, Jonathan, notices that Saul doesn't care anymore. Don't be that person. Let's not be that church. We're going to practically look at what that means here at the end of the Bible teaching. It said, may the Lord be with you as he used to be with my father, and may you treat me with the faithful love of the Lord as long as I live. But if I die, treat my family with this faithful love, even when the Lord destroys all your enemies from the face of the earth. Jonathan's getting the picture now. Wait a second. God put David in position to be king, and he's supposed to rule. He's going to take my dad's spot. He's going to rule over Israel, and God's going to use him to kick some serious butt for the kingdom. And he said, okay, I'm willing to die for this cause. That's how much I care. We don't really get to that level of care anymore, do we? Where we try to avoid pain is the whole point, not to step into care when it hurts. And so verse 16 really guides our third principle. It says, so Jonathan made a solemn pact with David, saying, may the Lord destroy all your enemies. And Jonathan made David reaffirm his vow of friendship again For Jonathan loved David as he loved himself. What does the great commandment say? Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your mind, with all of your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Boom. So here's what's happening. Our first steps of care, even verbalizing it, can help us become concerned and learn more about what we're really in. And this applies everywhere. Most of the time, the biggest reason we don't care is because we don't even stop to ask, how can I help you? And we totally miss the concern. But once we get concerned and we get the weight of what people are going through around us, and we get the spiritual weight of what God's doing. Do you know that if impact were to go away, I think God would shed a tear, because I think God has some serious impact in this community through the people here. Do you believe that? So we got to start to care, right? And we start to become concerned. Do you know that, yes, people without Christ really do die and go to hell? That's what the scripture says. And you know what? There are people who are really lonely, and they might even have Christ. They could even be sitting in this room going, yeah, hey, I enjoyed service, but man, how do I really connect in here? How do I really take root at the church? And they're kind of concerned. There's a lot because they're feeling lonely and by themselves. And all of this should butt into our third thing. When you get care and concern, you should go to community. Throw that guy up on screen there. Community is where biblical friendship starts to provide deeper and wider care. See, in the scripture here, you start to see Jonathan, his view of care is widening by the millisecond, all right? By the millisecond. He's first concerned about David, and then now he's starting to become concerned about David as himself. They develop a friendship, and he's fully in there, but now he starts thinking about the nation of Israel, right? Somewhere in there, this care is blossoming into community, and to not just a friend, but a group of friends. And I guarantee you, just the same way in this country, we have a real serious divide politically, socioeconomically. We have some just big chasms in this country. And we tend to stay away from those people, let alone care for them. And Jonathan, probably also being the king's son, had some people that just really hack him off. I mean, it's kind of like even at church, a church this size, if you hang around for 6 months, every once in a while you're going to walk in the room, you're going to go, I don't know if I like that guy. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just going to, you're like, Dave, are you allowed to say that? Or, hey, man, that lady, she's just not, it just happens. But here's the beauty of being a Christ follower. We say, even though there are differences, I care about you. And I'm going to be concerned about your well-being and your walk with God and your family and what's happening in your life. And I'm going to give of myself so that you can flourish in God's plan for your life, right? That's what it's about. And next thing you know, those cares and concerns in the community supersede the things that will usually divide you. Boy, this applies in so many places, and I don't have time because I look at the clock. Pastor Gage, you could thank him twice because he put a big clock up there, so I know what time it is, and I don't preach too long to you anymore. How does that sound? Yeah, some of you are like, high five, Gage. I love you. He gets a hug after service. But in all seriousness, biblical friendship produces deeper and wider care. He had a deeper friendship with Jonathan, right? Can I get an amen? Can somebody say an amen? Yeah, his friendship was going deeper with one person, but it was also going wider with the many. And this is what biblical care will do. Most of the time as a church, you know what ends up happening? People get the deeper part where they find their few that they can go deeper with, and they miss the wider part. In fact, the wider part gets criticized. When a church gets big, they go, oh, that's because they're just shallow. Or maybe they figured out how to care for more people than we have. Just maybe. Maybe. And so let's go back to Matthew 11:28 on the screen. I want to zero in on a mechanic for Impact Community Church, because I told you last week, at this point, we're a 50-50 congregation. And by that I mean we're 50% people who have been here most, if not all, of the 9 years of our existence. And we're about 50% people who have come within the last 6 months to a year, 3 months to a year. Maybe some of you just came today, whatever it is. But we have a lot of new people and a lot of existing people, and to boot, a lot of our existing people didn't just know each other for the first 9 years. You actually know each other for 30, 40, 50 years in this Duncan upstate community. Are you tracking with me? And so one of the things we have to do is we have to start getting to the place where we rebuild the care across that 50-50 line. You see what I'm saying? Like where we, that's why we do 10-minute party, where we don't huddle up even for 10 minutes with just the people we know, but we find people who aren't there. It's not because we're trying to like manipulate you into something or trying to make our church something that we can't. No. It's about deciding, me as a person, I'm going to care. We're a church of 150. We can care for each other pretty easily at this point, right? I mean, it's not that hard. And if we can't do it at 150, we sure as heck aren't going to do it at 200 or 300. And you know what the truth is? I don't think Christ has called us to be that kind of church. Yeah, that's what it is. And so let's come back to this right here. What's amazing, and I've alluded to this, so it'll be quick, but Jesus said, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest." What's amazing about this verse right here is Jesus was actually standing on ground in Israel, talking face to face, and primarily, first and foremost, anytime you read the Bible, it has to mean today what it meant to the original listener way back when, right? I mean, that's just how it works. And so that's how you find out the meaning of the Bible and how the meaning of the Bible doesn't change from time to time. But what's incredible about this, what can change and where we do get help is an application, because different situations, right? A verse can apply to different situations. And what's amazing about this is Jesus could have just meant this for the people standing in front of his face there in Matthew chapter 11 and said, "Come to me, all of you," as in I'm talking to you right now, if I said to all of you. But raise your hand if you have come to understand that he was really talking to every person of every generation. Raise your hand. It's okay. Raise your hand. It's not a trick question. Yeah, you've come to understand that he actually cared for everyone of every generation coming up, past, present, and future. That is some serious care. And so, Braden, go ahead and throw that graphic up there for me right there. And it's a little bit more seminary right here. So turn to your neighbor and say, "Go into seminar mode." Just tell them right now, go into seminar mode. I'm not going to preach. Sometimes most of the time, I'll tell you, I love to preach the end. You know what I'm saying? I really do. But today, it's not that kind of day. I'm going to divert from my norm just a little bit, because there's a mechanic here I want you to get. Here is what we see with the story of David and Jonathan. We see care, moving to concern, moving to community, and he somehow finds it to go back and to keep caring, and that care widens to his nation, to the kingdom, to the leadership. It just gets wider and wider and wider. Let me ask you, how wide is your care in your life? How narrow is your care? God wants to see it get wider. When you hear things, you care about them. Most of us in the room are pretty good at arrow number 1. Right? We'll care, and we can get concerned. I would say not all, but many of us are pretty good at arrow number 2, the arrow that moves us from concern to community. Here is where I'm going to confess, sometimes I totally stink, and I'm going to just say, not just Impact, but I would say the vast majority of church, you know, the average church size in America, I was talking to a friend this week, it's dropped. It's now like 68. Is the average congregation size. And I think it's because we stink. Go ahead and throw that next slide up at arrow number 3. where once we have our community, once we've cared, once we have the concern and we get the gravity of it, we get our friends, then we say, "I'm good. I don't care anymore," right? That's not my problem. We get into these kind of attitudes. And could it be that this is hurting your friendships in real life? Could it be that it's hurting your work relationships? Could it be that this is why marriages get stuck, because they kind of got to a place where they had it all and then they stopped? And that absolutely is true of church. Can I get an amen, right? Where we have to keep caring. And so we have to not just stop with our community, but the friendships God has given us, we now stand on them and we leverage them to care for new and more people. Do you get me? This is a sticky church. This is how it happens. This is why we cross-talk with people we don't know. This is why when you see someone who isn't sure where the restroom is, we need to be a church that goes, gee, that person looks a little lost. How can I help you? Right? It doesn't matter if you have a badge on, if you're scheduled to serve. I love what the Massengales did today. They showed up and they said, hey, I'm not sure if I'm on setup team schedule, which P.S., anyone is welcome on setup team schedule any day at 8 a.m. But they said, but we're here because we want to make a difference and we want to help. We know that it could help. And I was like, I love that attitude. And so what does this look like? Let's move. I told you I'm not going to preach it, and I want to preach the seminar because that's who I am. If you're brand new, next week I promise I'll bring the wood at the end. All right, but this is not what we're doing today. So let's catalyze the care to close. At the end of the day, it's people over programs. People over programs. Does a church need programs? Yes or no? Answer me. What do you think? Yes. I mean, at the end of the day, programs systematize the church. But you want to know what? If we systematize just programs that lead us to where we get our own friends and we quit, that program stinks. That's not the right program. So how do we prioritize people over programs? One, it's a text during the week to say, how are you doing? It is a call. It's an actual phone call. You know, one of the things our staff has started doing, a year ago, we started writing a personal note card to about 4 or 5 people a week. How many of you have received a personal note card from the staff? I mean, many of you, right? Not everybody, but many of you. So, look, it's personal. We call. At the end of staff meeting, most staff meetings now, we pick one person, and we actually call them, and we say, we want to encourage you today. You know why we do that? We can't care for everyone. We can't call everyone, but we can call someone, right? And that's how that goes. And it's the same way when we show up here. We're showing up to care. We're showing up to say, hey, I'm glad to meet you. Can I get your number? Do we need to go eat some lunch? Or, hey, would you like to hang out? You want to watch the playoff game at my house with me? Spontaneous. There's something sticky about a group of people. And you know what? It's real life where sometimes you invite someone and go, no, I can't do that today. Can you do it next week? No, I can't do it next week. What about the week after that? Yeah, I think I could do it that week. That's real life, right? But it's super sticky when we have a whole group of people going, hey, we actually like each other and want to be around each other. You start putting programs on top of that, and you got something. You start doing all the programs and all that. Do you know sometimes even discipleship groups, and I love discipleship. I have to. God commanded us, Jesus commanded us to do both evangelism and discipleship in the Great Commission, Matthew 28. I love them both, but you want to know what? Sometimes the way we do discipleship puts us in position where we stop at community, we get our friends, and then we never reach out again. And we're like Jonathan, we go deep with David, but we miss the kingdom opportunity that Jonathan took with David. And so, in the heart of that, I have a fun thing today, and this is so stupid and dumb, and you don't have to, and there's no strings attached because it's real life. But I just want to start leading from the front with this because I shouldn't ask you to do something that I won't do. And Amy and I are going to be at Tropical Grill for lunch, all right? And what's that? Oh, you want to go to Culver's? Okay. Well, and you could see, well, hey, that's not my problem, so... no, I'm kidding. Okay, so, the boss has made an executive decision that we're going to be at Culver's right here in Duncan. And, I was trying to help all you healthy eaters. Where are my healthy eaters, right? We're going to be at Culver's after. If you want to come hang out with our family, just come on. And it's kind of busy there, but we'll make it. But we'll probably be there like 12:45-ish because we have to maybe a little earlier than that. But if you want to come, it's not a program. Just come hang out. You can cut up with us and really look down at our family after you get to know us because we're a mess. And so those of you who are new, you may not know this, but so you're all invited after we pack up, and we're going to go hang out. And on occasion, I think I'm going to do that more in 2024 and just say, you know what, this is where we're eating lunch. If y'all want to come, y'all just come. How does that sound to y'all? And here's the thing, it doesn't have to be about me. But you can do that with other people too, and it would help if you did it even with different people. Meet someone you didn't know. Hey, you know that old statement, I think it was Abraham Lincoln that said, I don't like that person very much. I need to get to know them better. I think he said that. So the ladder. How many of you would say, Dave, you've had a ladder fetish in your preaching over the fall? Yeah, see, okay. There, and so, yeah, I knew that you all would call me out and be truthful, and that's a sign of good friendship, right, that you all could do that. The ladder, I set it up and didn't talk about it and didn't do anything, and honestly, I have no purpose for this ladder other than this. I'm not going to cause your heart to, your pulse to rise and get on the top of it or anything this time. And I may not bring it out for, I don't know, it might be years at this point. But the reason I put the ladder up and didn't talk about it is, how many of you, honestly, have been wondering why I put a ladder up in my message and what I was going to do with it since the beginning? No, raise it nice and high, raise it nice and high. Yeah, almost all of you. I put it up here because I really don't have anything to do with it other than to say, this is exactly what happens when people walk in and we don't care. They start to wonder why. Why have you set all this up? Why have you decided to serve? Why have you decided to do all this? Go to all this trouble to put on church. And you're not addressing the big thing in the room that everyone cares about. And people are walking in thinking, is anyone going to care about me? Does God care about me? What's going to happen? And when we don't address it, when we don't step out of our comfort zone and care, it's just awkward. It's as awkward as me putting a sermon illustration up here that I'm not going to use. We look at it and go, but there has to be some purpose for it. There has to. What's the take home? And we look and we say, when is he going to do something about it? People are walking in with the same thing, going, gee, when are they going to befriend me? When are they going to ask me who I am? When are they going to care about my kids? When are they going to ask me to lunch? When are they going to text me during the week just to say, hey, you mentioned that you had a doctor visit. How are you doing, right? And that has to happen. I know that happens on our 150% side of everybody that's known each other for 30, 40 years, but I'm not sure that it crosses the 50% to the other 50%. And 50%ers, you got to take some initiative in that too and say, you know what, I'm not just going to stand on the outside and we're going to just sit around and wait for somebody to address the elephant in the room. No, we're going to take initiative and we're going to be a church who cares. Why? Because principle number 2 is what? I care about you. Now listen, I'm not going to give a response time today. It's a little bit different. Do you all get it? The care right here. Sticky person, sticky people, sticky church. This is who we need to be in 2024. We're going to talk about some small group and discipleship next